Hi, my name's Peter Giannakis and this is Barista Fundamentals. Today we're looking at the new model Mazzer grinder, the V electronic grinder. It's a little bit different from the older model, but the principles are still the same. We're going to look at how to dial in our coffee using the new style of Mazzer grinder and how we program that to get the correct dose that we want. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to use a good set of scales. And it's really, really important that you do pick up a good set of scales for coffee, because 1/10 of a gram is a significant amount of coffee. The standard scales that you'll buy from a kitchen store or a supermarket do not give you 1/10 or 100th of a gram. And it's really, really important that at the very least, we get that 1/10 of a gram measurement. I highly recommend you jump online to a coffee supply website and pick up scales that are designed for coffee. These scales are around $60 Australian and they deliver almost overnight. So I highly recommend you pick up those scales. It'll be very difficult to adjust these grinders without a good set of scales. So the first thing we would do, and this is what we would do first thing in the morning, you turn your machine on, make sure that the temperature is where it needs to be. And also make sure that these group handles are really hot. It's very difficult to adjust your grind with cold group handles. I like to just run some hot water underneath the handles if they're not hot already. And I should expect you'd know what hot group handles feel like. You almost can't hold them for very long. Now, the first thing we're going to do is put some coffee in here. Now, depending on the coffee that you're working with, your roaster will have suggested a dose that we're going to put in here. In this instance, we're working with 19 grams of coffee. So you can see why the scales are going to be important. We're going to start off by grinding some coffee and putting 19 grams in there. Now, to measure that coffee, we need to first zero our scales. So you can see we're on 0 now. And we're just going to activate the grinder. Now, I should say, make sure you've got fresh coffee in this grinder. The coffee shouldn't have been sitting in there from last night because that coffee is going to extract completely differently as well. So some nice fresh coffee, and we're going to see how much coffee the grinder is going to give us. Okay, now if you have a close look here, you'll see it's currently set to the second setting, which grinds for 5.35 seconds. In 5.35 seconds, it's delivered us 17 grams of coffee. Now, we're working with 19, so I'm going to press the manual button here and just put another couple of grams of coffee in. And that brings us up to 18.5. $19.5. Let's just make that adjustment and get that to 19 grams. We'll accept 19.1. That should be fine. Careful not to lose any of that coffee because we want to remain as close to 19 grams as possible. Okay, we're then going to tamp that. Make sure you always clean your group handle before popping it onto the machine. Then we lock that on. And with this particular coffee, we want an extraction between 27 and 33 seconds as a working range, with our sweet spot at 30 seconds. So let's just see what happens on this particular extraction. We've pressed the double shot button and it's just counting up now. Now, I should make mention, it's really important that these volumetric buttons have been programmed correctly before you do this. We want to know that we're going to receive 30 mils of coffee, including crema, out of that one spout. So make sure that your machine's programmed correctly before you adjust your grinder. So you can see we're already over extracting. We're at almost 40 seconds now. So what we need to do is we need to adjust the grinder to create a larger particle size, to speed that up. We need to speed it up to get it back down to 30 seconds, okay? The alternative would be is to make the grind finer. If we make the grind finer, it's going to slow that time, and we certainly don't want that because, as you can see here, we're already overcooking the coffee. Okay, so if we come in nice and close, this is what we call our adjustment collar on the grinder. And what you might see is these little dots on the adjustment collar. You can see the big dots moving across to the little dots. What this shows us is if we move this collar in an anti-clockwise direction, the particle size will become smaller. But if we move in a clockwise direction, the particle sizes will become bigger. And in this instance, that's what we're wanting because we need to speed things up. So watching my adjustment, you'll notice it's not going to be a big adjustment. It's probably going to be about 0.5 centimeters worth of movement. Okay, now that we've made that adjustment, it's important to note that within this grinder, we have pre-ground coffee. We've got about 2 group handles worth of coffee that's already been ground to a consistency that's going to give us 39 seconds. So to see this change, we're going to purge this grinder of 2 group handles. So I'm going to unlock my group handle. That's going to be 1 group handle. Let's get rid of that. And a 2nd group handle. So what should be noted there is that coffee is the coffee that was already sitting between the blades and in the little chute that spits out the coffee, okay? That coffee grind is a little bit too fine for us. Now this 3rd one is the one I'm going to test. So we're going to put another 19 grams in the basket. Okay, now let's have a look at our weight. That's 17.8. We need to add a little bit more to get that to 19 grams. 19.1, and we'll accept the 0.1 because you can see there is a slight variation. Now we're 18.9. As close as you can to 19 grams. Certainly, if it was much further off, we would make an adjustment. Either take a little bit of coffee out or add a little bit. Clean our group handle. Now let's lock it on and see what time we get. Press the double shot button. And it certainly looks a little bit faster now, but the time will be our measure. What we're going for, as I mentioned, is anything between 27 and 33, and ideally as close to 30 as possible. That's our sweet spot for this particular coffee. We're at 20 seconds. Now we're in our zone. 31 seconds. I'm quite happy with that. And at this point, I'd be happy to commence work. The reason why I wouldn't necessarily adjust this any further is, depending on the pressure that I put on my tamp at this point in time, that could very well be 30 seconds. It could be 29 seconds, okay? So that's very, very workable, and we know we're making good coffee. So the very first step in adjusting our grinder is what we've just done. We always ensure that we've got the recipe correct. In this instance, we need 19 grams of dry coffee in the basket. Once we put the 19 grams in, we've tamped it, locked it on, and tested what time we had. If it was too fast, we would make a small adjustment on our grinder in the fine direction to slow it down. If it was too slow, we make a small adjustment on our grinding collar there, and we would make it a little bit, we'd make the particle size bigger to speed things up a little bit, and that's what we did in this instance. So now the second step in adjusting the grinder is setting this timer, okay? And that's all that this section here really is. It's a timer that tells the grinder to turn on and off at a certain time. And if we have a close look here, what you'll notice is our current setting for the second button is 5.35 seconds. Now I know that I actually manually had to tap that once, maybe for half a second, to get that up to 19 grams. So what I'm going to do to program this number 2 and tell it to grind for a little bit longer so we get that 19 grams, I'm going to press, I call this the hamburger button, the 3 lines. We press that, press the button we want to program, and here you can see second dose time, 5.35 seconds. So we're going to increase that just by a little bit. Let's go up to 5.6. All right. And to exit, we press the 3 lines again. It records that adjustment, and now we're going to test it. So we unlock our group handle. And let's see if it's now going to give us very close to 19 grams. We'll weigh that. 18.5. So what that's telling me is we need to set up that timer to run a little bit longer. So again, we press the 3 lines, tell it which one we want to program, and we're going to increase the dose. Let's increase that to 7.9. Press the 3 lines to save it and exit. We're going to get rid of this because we're going to test it one more time. Always careful not to lose any of that coffee because we want to measure how much coffee we get in that certain amount of time. Now we're at 19.7, which says to me I've probably overshot the mark. Let's program it one last time and see if I can get that right. So we press the 3 lines, program the second button. Let's bring that down to 5.8. Press the 3 buttons to save the programming, and we're going to test it one more time, making sure that we're zeroed in. $19.7. Now, at this point, don't get frustrated. It should be said that these grinders aren't 100% accurate. What happens when you press this button is it starts grinding, and as it grinds, it pushes coffee out into this funnel, and it drops the coffee. If at one moment you activate the grinder and it starts pushing coffee in that certain amount of time, you may get a big clump sitting there that doesn't fall the last time you dosed. The next time you dose, that clump may fall and give you more coffee than what you expected. So we generally take averages off our grinders, and it should be said that they're not 100% accurate. They do come close and they make life significantly easier. So let's bring that dosing down just a little bit more. Bring that back down to 5.73. Now let's see what we get here. $19.4, we're getting a little bit closer. What I will do is I'm going to bring that down just a little bit more. So now it's reading 19.2. I'm just going to test this right now, and let's see how we go with 19.2 grams. Should be said that that 0.2 may not affect us greatly, so let's have a look at what time we get. And the shot does look good visually. It looks like a little mouse's tail, maybe melted honey, and that's what we're looking for. But your ultimate guide will be the time of your extraction, and we adjust the grinder according to that time. $26, $27, we're now in our working zone. We're up a little bit high. So that additional dose has probably affected things. Let's bring that down a little bit and get it closer to 19 grams because we know that 19 grams works. One last time, make sure your group handle is zeroed in. You'll notice I vibrate my handle on the holster there, just so it collapses the coffee and it doesn't overflow and we don't lose any. 18.8. Okay, we're not far off. Let's tamp that and let's see how we go. Lock that on. Right, 20 seconds. We're now in our zone. And now we're making coffee at that sweet spot. So now we can open up the cafe and continue to work. During the working day, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you purge your grinder after making a change. If you're noticing that the time is slowly slipping down, you're in the 27 area or the 33 second area, what I want you to do is just observe it over the next few shots. If it seems that the average is slowly moving down in time or slowly moving up, at that point we would make small adjustments to our collar to get back to where we need to be. If things change drastically during the day, it's a complete disaster and you're now doing 20-second shots or 40-second shots, I would absolutely pull out the scales and recalibrate from zero and get back on track. If you're not that busy, a cafe, it's not uncommon for a cafe to weigh every single one of their shots. So that's something that you can also do, but when you are busy, that may not be feasible for you. I hope this tutorial has assisted you in understanding this a little bit further. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to give us a call.